Hi, welcome back to the channel. I'm Dr. Claire Killingback and I'm a reader in physiotherapy. And in this video today, we're going to be talking through one of the most important topics in education, which is how do we move our teaching from being more teacher-centred towards more student-centred. So if you want to become a really engaging teacher, this is such an important concept to understand and apply. Let's start with a traditional approach, which is teacher-centred learning, a model which has dominated education for centuries. In this model, content is delivered in a one-way flow, and the students are passive recipients, and the teacher is seen as the sage on the stage, the expert who transmits knowledge. So as we can see from this 14th century image of what a university classroom was like, then it doesn't look too different to university classrooms I often teach in today. And I will hold my hand up and say, when I first started teaching, I thought this was what teaching was. But I've been on a bit of a journey with my teaching, understanding and moving from being teacher-centred to being more student-centred. And one of the best resources I found to help me understand that was from a textbook called Biggs and Tang, and they talk through 3 different levels of teaching. So I'm just going to go through those now to help you see the journey that you go on, I guess, as a teacher. So with a level 1 style teaching, the focus is on what or who the student is. So a level 1 teacher will see their responsibility as knowing their content well, expounding it clearly, but really it's about that transmission of information, usually in the form of lectures. So there will be a list of content, and once that's spoken from the front, then really the rest is up to the students to figure out, because it's really up to the students to turn up, to listen, to take notes, to do the pre-session work. And if they don't do that, then they don't get the learning, but that's on them. That is level 1 style teaching. And as I say, this is probably where I started because I was the good student who turned up and listened and did the work. So I kind of assumed everyone else would be like that. And it was only when I started teaching that I realised, oh, actually, no, not all students are like that. There is a real variation in each classroom. The challenge is then it's really easy to blame the students. And if you don't go careful, these kind of thoughts go through your head. So we might think, how can we be expected to teach these students with the grades that they come in with and they would never have been admitted 10 years ago? Or we might think, well, they lack any motivation at all. Of course they're not going to learn. Or these students lack the suitable study skills, but that's not my problem. They'll have to go to the library study skills team to sort that out. Now, there may well be some truth in some of those statements, but at the end of the day, I am paid to teach all students, not just the good students. And so that's where I have to ask myself, what else could I be doing that might make my students learn more effectively? With level 2, the focus is on what the teacher does. So we're still talking quite a teacher-centric approach. And this is mostly still based on transmission, but that's more about transmitting concepts and understanding, so not just the knowledge and the information. So this level teacher really works on getting a toolbox of teaching skills, relying probably a lot on variation in technique. So picture this. There might be music playing as the students are coming into the classroom. There'll be an introduction where the lecturer does a recap on what was covered last week and discusses what's going to be covered today. There might be a video clip followed by a Q&A where they pick on a few people just to make sure everyone is kept on their toes, and then they throw in a few jokes just to lighten the mood and keep it fun. So really, there is still an element of blame. But this time it's on the teacher, because if the students aren't learning, it's because the teacher isn't getting it right. So there's lots of variation, which will likely get a good response from students. And I'm not saying that this is all wrong, but the focus is still entirely on what the teacher does, not on what the students are learning. With level 3, the focus is on what the student does, and this is a student-centred model of teaching because the purpose of the teaching is to support learning. So you can't just say, well, I taught them, but they didn't learn. And yes, a good teacher needs mastery over a variety of techniques, but if the students don't learn, then it's a little bit pointless. And that's why the focus on this level is on what the student does. And so coming back to what Biggs and Tang talk about in their textbook with level 3 learning, there really are 3 points to consider with this. So what is it the students are to learn? Like what is the intended, the desirable outcomes of the learning? i.e. what do we intend students to be able to do after we've taught the topic? Because it's not good enough to have used an array of visual aids. The whole point is how well the students have learned. The second point is around what it means for the students to understand the content in a way that is stipulated in the learning outcomes. So here we need to be really clear on what that level of understanding is that students are to have achieved by the end of the session, the module, the trimester, the year, etc. The third point is around what kind of learning activities are required to achieve that level of understanding. And so this is about making sure that the learning activities are attuned to helping students achieve that particular level. If you could sum up level 3 in one sentence, it would be that it's not what we do, but it's what the students do that is important. And in that way, we're more of the guide on the side, helping the students discover their knowledge. I know I want to be a level 3 teacher. The reality is I'm probably straddling somewhere between level 2 and level 3, and that's something I will keep developing. I also want to say, I will do mini lectures at some points because that's entirely appropriate. However, I try and keep them shorter, and then I will follow them up with a learning activity where the students can then apply the learning that we've been talking about. Now, I am only too aware of the landscape in higher education, and we are being pushed to have larger and larger cohorts. So there may be some of you watching this and thinking, well, I have cohorts of 200-300 students. And so you have to teach in those classrooms that look like the 14th century classroom with row upon row. But I guess what I'm trying to say is actually, how can we move our practice forwards so we are being closer to it being around what the student does, so that we can provide those opportunities for students to be actively engaging with their learning. And as we foster these environments where students are more engaged and they're more autonomous in their learning, then you can do that deeper level learning, you can do the critical thinking, you can do the real life application, and that's what I find makes teaching really fun. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share for more tips on effective teaching strategies. See you in another video.